Okay, welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Please silence cell phones and note that this meeting is being taped by FCTV. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the state zoning statutes as well as the town zoning bylaws in reviewing and voting on each application. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public and to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to closing in the hearing process and reaching a decision. Number one, to begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement for the hearing and read pertinent information from the file. Two, the applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation. Time may be extended by a vote of the board. Three, the board will then question the applicant. And four, the public will be invited to comment. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes and be strictly related to the proposal. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair and should come to the podium. State your name and address for the record, speak into the mic, and it will not amplify your voice, and record audio for the FCTV viewers. If there's any private party recording this, you need to ask permission, if there's anyone. And then I'll introduce my board members. On the far right is Mark Finneran. His left is Scott Peterson. To my right is Frank Duffy, the clerk. My name's Suzanne Murphy, chair. To my left is James Morse, vice chair. Tony Pertucci, associate. Nick Haney, associate. And we have Noreen Stockman, zoning administrator. And Ashley DeMello, office assistant. And if we have a time right now, if anyone has a public statement about something not on our agenda, you're welcome to come up to the podium. We will not comment, but you're welcome to come up. Anybody?
We take complaints, too.
We can be a complaint department. All right, so we'll start off. The first hearing is a continuation, 006-25, Smith Serlins, 51 Thomas Lane. They've requested a withdrawal.
Without prejudice.
Without prejudice? Can I have a motion from anybody?
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to allow hearing 0625 Smith Collins, 51 Thomas Lane, Falmouth, to withdraw without prejudice.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You're all set, Attorney Clough?
I am.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. And then we move on to 9 Sycamore.
Okay. For number 9 Sycamore, we have application 21 of the year 2025. Mario Kula and Josephine D'Angelo have applied to the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to section 240-10.2A of the Code of Falmouth to raise and rebuild the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. Property is located at 9 Sycamore Street in East Falmouth. Let's see, I read you the address. This is for a special permit under section 240-10.2A to raise and rebuild the non-conforming single-family dwelling. There is also within the application a request for the Board of Appeals to determine that a special permit is not necessary and that the building may be permitted by right under section 240-10.2B1D of the Falmouth zoning bylaw. Property is in a Little Pond Coastal Pond Overlay District. The existing single-family dwelling is a 2-bedroom at 1,025 square feet. The proposal is for a single-family dwelling, 3 bedrooms at 586 square feet. It's in a VE 15 flood zone. There's one previous...
Can you do those numbers again, please? Can you do that?
Existing single-family, 2-bedroom, 1,025 square feet. Proposal is for a single-family dwelling, 3 bedrooms, 586 square feet. That's taken off the application.
586 square feet.
Yeah, footprint.
Footprint. Wrong.
Footprint
Oh,
Footprint of the building.
Okay. All right.
Total floor square footage would be
Yeah.
more, but okay.
What- Is that there?
There was a decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, number 79 of the year 1986, which denied a second floor to the property. There was another application in the year 2022, which was withdrawn. The lot is 2,932 square feet in a district which currently requires a 40,000 square foot minimum. The frontage on the lot is 41 feet in a district which currently requires 100 feet. Sycamore Street is a public right-of-way at this location. The lot coverage by structure is currently 35%. It will be reduced to 20%, which is within the 20% limit of the zoning bylaw. The lot coverage by structure, parking, and paving is currently 46%. It will be reduced to 38.9%, which is within the 40% allowed by the zoning bylaw. The existing property has two non-conforming setbacks. To the street, it's 1.1 feet in a district which requires 25, and to the west, it's 0.6 of a foot in a district which requires 10 feet. We've been advised that all the proposed dwelling, when erected, will conform to all setbacks. The height is 34 feet. That's the proposed height. Engineering has given us a referral. They have noted that the property will require a driveway permit. They've requested that we condition the project so that all stormwater runoff remains on the property and that we implement erosion and sediment control. There was also an issue with building numbers, which they'll have to take up with the engineering department if this project is approved. The Board of Health says that the sewer, it's on the sewer, and a 4-bedroom house is allowed. Conservation has informed us that they have issued an amended order of condition approving the project. The Water Department requests that the water service be upgraded to 1-inch PE. Fire Department, no comment. Wastewater says that there's a sewer connection permit required, and the Building Department has no comment. We have 18 letters in support and 77 letters in opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney here in town, and I am before you representing Mario Kula and Josephine D'Angelo, the owners of 9 Sycamore Street, both of whom are here with us tonight. Mario and Joe are seeking permission to raise and rebuild the single-family dwelling on Sycamore Street. This property is located at the southern end of the Mara Vista Peninsula in a dense residential neighborhood. It is in the RC zoning district, and it is within AVE 15 flood zone. The board has previously reviewed an application for this project in 2022. We submitted revised plans in 2023, but withdrew based on feedback from the neighbors. Since then, significant changes have been made to the application to attempt to address the concerns of the neighbors and the comments of the board. Some of those changes, as you'll see, have been more successful than others. Joe and Mario, mother and son, purchased this property in 2022 and are seeking to make improvements. It has been used by the applicants and also as a rental, and upon completion of the renovations will be the retirement home for Joe. This dwelling was built in 1940, and as with any structure of that age, it's in need of upgrades. And because it's in a VE 15 flood zone, those improvements should comply with the FEMA and building code requirements relative to substantial improvements. Public good is served by compliance with those standards. In order to comply, the bottom of the joist of the first floor of habitable space need to be at least 2 feet above the flood elevation, which is elevation 17. In this case, that's approximately 11.6 feet above grade. Currently, there's a 1-story dwelling and shed, footprints 1,025 square feet, and the lot's 2,932 square feet. It's non-conforming to front yard setback, currently at 1.1 feet where 25 is required. To side yard setback to the west of 0.6 feet where 10 is required. Lot coverage by structure of 35% where 20 is allowed by right and up to 25 by special permit. And lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking at 46% where 40 is allowed by right. Presently, there's actually no parking on the site that's not within the street layout. The applicant's proposal reduces clutter on the lot, eliminates the existing shed, and does provide for parking on site, more than sufficient parking for 2 or more vehicles. There are 3 proposed bedrooms, which is an increase of 1 over the existing, but it is on the town sewer, which allows for 4 bedrooms by right. The proposed dwelling is substantially smaller than what exists today. It's 586 square feet. And the proposal will eliminate all existing dimensional nonconformities. The front yard setback is improved from 1.1 feet to 25.6. The side yard setback to the west is improved from 0.6 feet to 11. The rear yard setback remains conforming at 10.2. The side yard setback to the east remains conforming at 11.4. Lot coverage by structure is decreased from 35% to 20%. And the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking is decreased from 46% down to 38.9%, which is below the 40% allowed by right. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, will comply with those FEMA requirements. Before I get much further, I should note that based on conversations with some of the neighbors, and trying to find a way to make this work, the applicants intend to revise the plans to eliminate the roof deck. Those plans have not been completed as of yet. However, if the board's willing to approve this, it could be conditioned upon submittal of the same. That alteration would reduce the ridge height by approximately 3 feet. We are requesting a special permit pursuant to 240-10.2A, which allows for pre-existing non-conforming structures to be changed by special permit. The board finds that they're not substantially more detrimental than what exists. You're asked to consider the standards of 240-12.1E and whether or not the alteration creates any new dimensional nonconformities, impairs views and vistas, and reasonably conforms to the average dimensions in the neighborhood. Here, there's no new nonconformity created, and all of the existing dimensional nonconformities are eliminated. We did prepare a lot comparison worksheet looking at 37 properties within a 300-foot radius. And again, this is a very dense, clustered neighborhood, but the proposed dwelling is below the average footprint and gross floor area in the neighborhood. This home was designed to observe the appropriate setbacks to respect the privacy of the neighbors while also complying with FEMA regulations. In terms of average dimensions, it's very much in character with the neighborhood, the only difference being this would be in flood zone compliance and therefore elevated on stilts, pilings. Simply driving through the neighborhood, you can see many similar sized and larger homes, many of which, if built today, would face similar requirements. I'd like to address some of the comments and correspondence received by the board and directed at the applicants. Mari and Joe have made significant efforts to discuss the design with the neighbors, and those efforts have largely gone unreciprocated. But they have made significant changes to address the stated concerns. So, what you see here is what was originally proposed. And in that case, setback was improving from 1.1 feet to 7.7. The side yard was going from 0.6 to 5.1. And the lot coverage by structure was being reduced from 35 to 34. The footprint was going to be 1,008 square feet with a gross floor area of 1,800 square feet. That was met with some significant criticism from the neighborhood, as well as some comments from the board. So additional changes were made to the plans in the next round. In which case, what they're proposing here tightened the footprint significantly, and because of that, required a more modern roof style to remain under the allowable height limitation. They improved or eliminated all the existing nonconformities, except lot coverage by structure was going to be 22.3%, which could have been allowed by special permit. However, that was still met with pushback. We were advised by neighbors to propose a second floor on the existing structure, which we couldn't do, because that would constitute, again, a substantial improvement. And beyond that, there was an unwillingness to engage in conversations. So what we ended up doing was going back with the plans that you see before you now. Again, these plans eliminate all of the existing nonconformities in significant ways. However, we've been told that no concessions of any kind have been made by the applicants. Even within the last few weeks, we've offered on multiple occasions to meet with the neighbors and to work towards a plan that they'd be in favor of. We proposed a sketch plan. Which would have been similar in style to the original proposal, however, eliminating the roof deck and eliminating half the habitable space on the second floor, keeping that more traditional roof line. And with that, we were told there's no point in continuing conversation. So I say all that to note that we have made efforts and concessions to work towards addressing the concerns of the neighborhood. There is a similar home that I think is worth discussing. 5 Ardmore Street, just 2 streets over, was granted a special permit in 2004. That was a lot of only 2,500 square feet, and they allowed for lot coverage by structure of 41% and a ridge height of 34.6%, 34 feet 6 inches. The difference is, at that time, that was not in a velocity zone. It is now, after the change in 2014. So it was not required to be on pilings. 72 Minot was before this board in January. That was allowed to be raised and rebuilt with a ridge height of 34 feet 10 inches, but again, not in a velocity zone, so it's not elevated on pilings. Compliance with flood zone requirements should be encouraged and incentivized. It should not be punished for being the first one in the neighborhood to do so. There were some other matters that were raised in the correspondence. There were references to the 1986 special permit application not denied, in which the board cited a negative visual effect. However, that proposal was for a second floor that was going to be within 1 foot of the property line. In this case, all the proposed setbacks meet the requirements. There's a recurring idea in some of the correspondence that these aren't homeowners, they're commercial investors, and they're somehow prohibited from using the property, and that's simply not accurate. They have a commercial mortgage which states they shall not reside there, but reside has a specific definition of permanent or continual use. At the time it was purchased, the idea was to rent it for a year, during which time they would undertake permitting to have plans approved, and then to undertake renovations, in which case there'd be a refinance and a construction loan. As I've mentioned, this is intended to be used as the retirement home of Josephine after completion. Either way, whether they're investors or homeowners, it should have no bearing on the merits of the application. As I've discussed, this application does not create any new dimensional nonconformities. It eliminates all existing dimensional nonconformities. Again, front yard setback from 1.1 to 25, over 25, side yard setback from 0.6 to over 10, lot coverage by structure to 20%, lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking below 40 at 38.9%. Under this metric, the proposal is not substantially more detrimental, and with flood zone compliance and the elimination of all those nonconformities is a significant improvement. The board is asked to consider these issues, and also whether the proposal has adverse effects that outweigh the benefits. And as consideration, you're asked to look at the adequacy of the site. While undersized by today's standards, it is used currently for a single-family home and will be used for a single-family home. It is suitable and well situated for proposed use. Again, there's no change from the current use as a single-family dwelling. There'll be an improvement to traffic flow and safety as we're providing on-site parking where none exists. There is an impact on neighborhood visual character. While the structure is elevated, compliance with flood zone requirements should not be viewed as a detriment, as it runs contrary to public policy and the public good. There are adequate methods of sewage disposal and drainage. This is connected to town sewer, and we have provided drainage on site where none presently exists. The utilities and public services are present and more than adequate, and there's no impact on the supply of affordable housing. Here we have a proposal that is not substantially more detrimental than what exists. It will provide a benefit in eliminating all of the existing nonconformities and coming into compliance with those flood zone requirements. Given changes in coastal areas that are currently underway, this is what the town should be encouraging. Changes allow for less damage when, not if, there's a significant storm. It's important to reiterate this. We want this from homeowners. We need these changes for the health and resiliency of the town. The applicants and their design team have worked hard to find ways to reduce the scope and impact of this project and to reduce any potential effects to the abutters and to respond to the comments of the town. I believe that you can and should grant the special permit, and I'd be glad to address any questions you might have. I want to note on something else Frank mentioned from the application. Alternatively, I believe the board could provide a supportive finding that this does not require a special permit under the exceptions set forth in 240-10.2B1D, which says exempted from the requirement for a special permit of the following: alteration, reconstruction, extension, or structural change to a non-conforming single or two-family residential structure shall not be considered an increase in the non-conforming nature of the structure and shall be permitted by right under the following circumstances. Subsection D says alteration to a non-conforming structure where the alteration will comply with all applicable sections of the zoning bylaw in effect at the time of application and will not increase the habitable space. We're proposing 842 square feet of habitable space, which is less than the 858 that presently exists within the home. So with that, I would open up to any questions from the board and happy to address any comments or concerns.
Who'd like to start up here?
Well, Attorney Clower, do you have the language that you could put up for 240-10.2B?
If you bear with me.
14D? Just so the folks can better understand what you mentioned. And I guess through you, Madam Chair, should we look at this portion of it prior to getting into the rest of the permit?
Yes.
Yes. This section here and this section here.
Mark, I'll yield to you.
So we're going to address if it needs to be, if we're going to do a special permit
At
first?
least for me,
I
I'm
agree with this.
struggling with that.
There's no point in going through everything if if we,
Right. So Mark, right now, we're only going to address if we're going to proceed as a special permit or not.
Or support a finding. Or a supportive finding.
Yeah.
Well, pretty easy for me. We had one not dissimilar to this just a few months ago, and we gave it the big thumbs down. So I think in being consistent, I would say that it requires a special permit. I certainly wouldn't vote any other way.
Scott?
Well, I guess I'm going to take the other side of the argument. I appreciate Mark's comments, but my read of this is, under the changes that the applicants made and the additional elimination of the roof deck, that I don't believe that they do need a bylaw, that they do not need us to approve it here.
I think point of order, it seems like the board's debating whether or not it needs.
Come on,
You'll have to come up.
Thank you.
Attorney Chris Lebhurst from Falmouth. I represent the Flynn's on the corner of Sycamore and Mara Vista. I think before we decide whether or not we agree with Mr. Clower relative to the special permit or the exemption issue, I'd like to hear, I'd like to tell the board my position on that as well, if I may. Would this be the appropriate time to do it if
No.
Mr. Clower is?
no, after we're finished.
But it seems like you're debating something without public comment on the issue, whether or not this is exempt from a special permit. It seems like you're ready to make that decision, and I think there are things that need to be brought to the board's attention.
We won't do that
We
without
won't do
public
that
comment.
without talking to you.
I'm sorry?
We didn't intend to
No.
cut you out of it.
We talk first, and then public comment comes afterwards.
Well, I already heard you feel one way and you feel another way, and we haven't
It's
had
part
the
of our
public
debate at the
comment.
moment.
Okay, well, I apologize, I don't mean to.
No, you will definitely be allowed to be
Absolutely.
heard on every
Yep.
aspect of this.
Yes.
You'll hear before we vote.
Promise?
You'll speak before we vote. Yes, promise. Frank, you want me to go next?
No, I think,
You're just in
I
agreement?
think, did he address your questions?
Yes.
He did? Mr. Clower, would you, the bylaw that you're citing, 240-10.2B1D, provides that there shall be no increase in the habitable space in order to qualify for this exemption under the zoning bylaw. Would you kind of go through the layout of the existing cottage and the habitable space, and now what the layout of the new property is, and how you come to this conclusion?
Yep.
That there's about, I think, 16 square feet less of habitable space?
So right now we have a footprint of 1,008 square feet, I think we said, which is shown basically here.
1,025 square feet.
1,025, thank you. Which is shown basically here. And by flood zone compliance, this area is not considered habitable space. The entryway and the ground level is not considered habitable space. It can't be habitable. This is what's left. You have the first floor here and a half story above. We had the architectural team put together area calculations of the existing and proposed and came up with, and this was designed very specifically to be under the existing. So the existing, and I think it's instructive to look here, you'll see this is the building here, and this is what's proposed. So already we're taking off a 500 square foot area in terms of footprint, and there is a half story involved, but that is, remains under the 858 existing square footage.
So the top floor then is a half story because it's one half or less than the floor below it?
You'll see the size here. And so that's shown, there is a open deck on a
there's a
portion
deck.
of it. So that is why it is smaller in
Yeah,
size.
so the deck doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
So that deck area is shown here, would be here.
Madam Chair. They're asking us to make a decision here with plans that are considerably altered, and they don't have to even show us. And we're supposed to imagine, divine what it is that they're proposing to do as far as removing the roof deck and what it leaves us with. I think,
The change there would just be the elimination of the roof deck here and the step spiral staircase. There'd be no other alteration.
Frank, any
And
further
these-
questions?
and
No.
So the roof deck and the spiral stairs were all on the exterior of the house? Right. That's the only question I have right now.
Jim,
I have no questions at this time.
Tony?
Are we still debating 10-2B?
Yeah.
B? Then I have no questions on that part of it, but we'll have questions after that.
Got it. Nick?
Nothing at this time.
I feel it does need a special permit because it's going to change the neighborhood, I feel. It's just my opinion. It's a pretty drastic change for the neighborhood, and that's why I feel it's important. It's just my opinion. Anybody else want to say anything before we go to the public on it? Or Attorney Leritz?
well, would you mind if I hold the public here?
Yes.
And as far as asking them, like, how many people in this room?
No.
Cannot do that.
No.
Here for this permit?
No, can't do
No,
that.
I would say for the permit you can do, but don't ask any.
No, no,
Can't.
no,
Most
it's right.
of the
I want to
people
know
in
how many
here are.
people are here for this application
Madam Chair,
of all
you
the
can't
people in the
hold
room.
public at all.
Not polling.
No.
Okay, that's good.
If I can ask a point of order?
Yes.
Does a vote as to whether or not a supportive finding was required require a supermajority or a majority?
It's not affordable housing.
I thought
It's
it was
not, but it's not a special permit.
No, I think it's a
I
majority.
believe it's a majority.
I think it is too,
I
yeah.
think it's majority.
You think so? I think so.
Wouldn't it be prudent if we were to know exactly?
Yeah, it would be prudent to know exactly, yes. Can you look that up? I don't know, really. I think it's majority, but I'm not sure. We should know before we vote.
All right, so obviously, what is being asked of you is whether there's a special permit required or not. And so obviously, you need a supermajority to issue a special permit. I would expect the vote to be the same because it's a board action, but I did not specifically look that up.
I think it says to grant a special permit or a variance requires a supermajority.
Right, but
Well,
if you
procedural
were,
question as to whether or
Right.
not you're going to even go that far as a majority, I think.
Right.
But
So-
that's just my thought.
yeah, so if you're making a finding that you don't need a special permit,
Sounds kind of gray to me.
Yeah. What should we do here, Attorney?
I'm going to listen to a few people out there,
Yeah.
maybe.
All right, let's go to Attorney Leritz for a comment.
Shall I limit my comments to simply that, the exemption issue for the moment?
Please.
I don't believe the request is properly before the board. And I don't believe it should be taken up. The reason why the applicant is here tonight is because they did go to the building department, where your building commissioner denied a request for a building permit and required them to apply for a special permit. If they didn't need a special permit, it would have been decided by the building department. We wouldn't be here tonight, okay? If you look at the bylaw, 240.23A3, it enumerates the powers of the ZBA. And the ZBA has
Excuse me, what is this section again?
2.3A3. It's early on in your bylaw.
Page numbers help.
111.
Okay. Page 7.
I apologize if I have the wrong copy of the bylaw, but I don't believe I do. November 2022?
No.
Zoning Board of
November
Appeals.
23.
I got 23, yeah.
Well, I may have the wrong number. The Zoning Board of Appeals powers. The Zoning Board of Appeals shall have the following powers. A, to hear and decide appeals in accordance with 240-12.4. Those are appeals from the building commissioner. B, to hear and decide applications for special permits upon which it is empowered to act. C, to hear and decide petitions for a variance. D, to delegate to the zoning administrator some of its powers. And E, to hear 40Bs, comprehensive permit applications. The building commissioner says they need to come to this board. If they don't like that decision, there is a procedure to follow. You appeal the decision of the building commissioner. The building commissioner comes into this room and stands before this board and tells you why he is not in agreement with Attorney Clower. We seem to be bypassing that process. I don't find any enabling legislation in the bylaw for this board to simply say, you don't need to come here. I mean, that may happen occasionally as a matter of practice, but that doesn't make it right. The bylaw enumerates the powers of the board. And years ago I was on this board. It was basically three things: special permits, variances, and appeals from the building commissioner. 40B came along, and I'm sure this board is quite familiar with 40Bs by now. But this is not a board that you come to in a public hearing and say, we're here for a special permit, but perhaps we don't need to be here. In my opinion, we're here to hear a special permit application tonight, and if we disagree with the determination of the building department, that decision is a decision to be appealed and come before this board in a proper manner.
Anybody have a question or response on that up here?
I do. I think this question comes before us without the proper 7-day notification, if nothing else. His application was for what his application was for. It certainly wasn't for this. This is thrown on us tonight. I have a problem with that as well. And then not knowing what the vote is supposed to be, whether it's a majority or a supermajority. And then reading here, I have to agree with Mr. Leberts as well. I think that's kind of a preponderance. I don't. And then
If
we're asked to make a decision without proper illustration. I mean, you know, as minor as you might think it would be. You know, and then on top of that, maybe we're getting too far into it, the meat of it, but just because you're taking the steps off, who's to
If
say
the
that that's not
applicant
going to be
didn't,
used?
if the applicant didn't need a special permit, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. The building department is not granting the building permit. The building department is saying you need a special permit. If you want to appeal that determination, you have every right to, but that hasn't been done. And if you look at your enabling or legislation or the powers granted to you, to this board under the bylaw, I don't believe you have the power to do what Attorney Clower is asking you to do tonight.
Madam Chair? It's in the, we don't have a letter from the building commissioner with his decision, which we often do, but in his application, the applicant specifically requested this relief. And it-
Well, what is that request? Is that a request for a special permit or a variance?
it's
or is
both.
it-
It's in the alternative. And it's in the application for anybody to see. So it's not that there has been no filing with this board to appeal a decision of the building
Could an
commissioner.
applicant file an application before this board that merely says, we want this board to determine that we don't need a special permit?
If there's a provision in the zoning bylaw that says there's an exemption that applies, I don't see why they can't ask us to make that decision.
Madam Chairman, if I may, through you, just in pulling up Chapter 40A, Section 8, appeal to permit granting authority reads, an appeal to the permit granting authority as the zoning ordinance or bylaw may provide, may be taken by any person aggrieved by reason of his inability to obtain a permit or enforcement action from any administrative officer under the provision of this chapter by the regional planning agency in whose area the city or town is situated, or by a person including an officer or board of the city or town or of an abutting city or town aggrieved by an order of decision of the inspector of buildings or other administrative official in violation of any provision of this chapter or any ordinance or bylaw adopted thereunder. So in looking at this, I would have to agree with the argument at this point of Attorney Lebhurst that absent Mr. Clower, and I'm happy to ask him for the purpose of the record, if his client has been aggrieved, if a building permit has been denied, it seems that if the building commissioner viewed this as an as-right build, it would have been granted. If it was denied, then I think that would be then before us. We don't do a lot of appeals of the building commissioner's determination, but I think at this point, as to that issue, as to whether or not Mr. Clower has the burden of showing that the applicant has been aggrieved by the denial of Mr. Street to issue a building permit in this particular situation, that would then be for us as not a special permit application, but as an appeal.
And
Hold on, Mark, hold on.
I've spoken with Mr. Street, and I know Mr. Clower has spoken with Mr. Street, and I've spoken with Mr. Clower. There may not have been some formal application denied. That I don't know. But I do know that Mr. Street was consulted, and he said, you got to get a special permit at the ZBA. That's what I do know. And if we're going to somehow backdoor Mr. Street here and sort of come before this board saying we don't agree with Street, but we're not appealing Street, I think that there's a procedural problem. Mr. Street knows about this application, and he has specifically said it needs to come before this board for a special permit.
So,
And again, even notwithstanding that, if you look at the powers that this board has, does it have the power to say you don't have to come before us? It has to be granting a permit, or it has to be hearing an appeal of Street's decision. We're not hearing an appeal of Street's decision. Whether or not he even sought the special permit tonight, if you're going to go along with Attorney Duffy's logic, an applicant could simply come in here for a public hearing and say, we don't think we need to come before this board. Yet here we are telling you that. It makes no sense. There are only certain ways procedurally you get before the board. And I know Mr. Street's position. It's a 2,900 square foot lot. We don't see 2,900 square foot lots. Just as Ms. Murphy said, it's a very, very small lot, and he wasn't granting the special permit. He wasn't granting the building permit.
Madam Chair.
Because if he was, we wouldn't be here.
Again, just with my argument before, I don't know what Frank was saying, but let's just get back to page 1. I mean, this is what you give us when we go out and look at these. Application. It doesn't say applications, it says application. Applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to section 240-10.2 of the Code of Falmouth to raise and rebuild the non-conforming single-family structure. It says nothing else. I don't understand how we leapfrog to that in the first place.
Let's let Attorney Clower come up, please.
If I may just also, to echo Mr. Finneran, the publication says nothing about seeking some form of declaratory judgment before this board that we don't need to be here. His letter to the board says it, but it says nothing in the publication.
Come on up,
The
Attorney.
If the board wants to continue the hearing and talk with Mr. Street, I'd welcome it, quite frankly, but I think that might be the prudent way to go about doing it.
I just want to hear from Attorney Clower, please.
Just one more thing.
Go ahead.
It wouldn't be properly noticed. This is the notice. I mean,
So to clarify, there's been no building permit application, nor has there been a denial of the building permit application. So it's not an appeal of the building commissioner's determination, to Mr. Morse's point. However, Chapter 48, Section 6 allows the board to make a supportive finding that something is not substantially more detrimental, and our bylaw specifically carves out this as an exemption for not being substantially more detrimental. I did consult with Mr. Street, and his comment to me was, you should go to the zoning board, not necessarily for a special permit. We can get a supportive finding. He and I discussed that as a possibility. So that's why we submitted, and that's why my cover letter went into length about how, in the alternative, the board could find that no special permit is required.
Mr. Attorney Clower, my hesitation about this is that this board, without getting into specific hearings, has been overturned in litigation when there have been these informal requests or informal determinations. I would prefer, as to this issue, well, first of all, I agree with Mr. Finneran about the proper notice. I'm very concerned that it may not be that there would be an open meeting violation if we take it up, but substantially, even if it was properly noticed, I would prefer, if you're asking for this, that you've gone and requested something that you're arguing is by right, and that you're then aggrieved when the building commissioner says, no, it's not by right, you need a special permit, that we then have something in the file saying, okay, the building commissioner's weighed in, he said no. Now it's a very clear appeal, as opposed to us saying, you're asking us essentially to make a declaratory, we can make findings, but you're asking us to essentially make a declaratory judgment, so to speak.
No, I was looking for supportive finding. So I think I am asking for a finding. But that being said, I've presented the argument for the special permit. I'm fine proceeding in that manner if the board's not comfortable giving us a supportive finding that a special permit's not needed, because I think that we satisfy the conditions for a special permit.
Madam Chair, I mean,
Go ahead, Scott.
the legal wrangling aspect of this, I'm not the attorney on the board. Should town council look at Attorney Clower's application here and potentially does this bylaw as he stated, or as Attorney Lebherz has countered, is it appropriate for us to review?
Did you just waive your argument under?
That's what I thought I just heard too.
Listen, Mr. Duffy, given the choice, I'd rather have you determine that I don't need a special permit. But if the board's not going to do that, I'm willing to proceed. But my preference, of course, would be that there be a determination that no special permit's required.
Madam Chair, just for the board's edification, on a regular basis, people meet with the building commissioner and they want to do a project. And many times, he looks at something and sees an encroachment or whatever and sends people upstairs for a special permit. He does not have a process where he issues a denial and then sends people. So if Mr. Clower asserts that there was no building permit applied for, then there was no denial, and therefore he does not need to be before this board as an appeal. And as far as notice goes, I will tell you the truth. These legal ads are very expensive. That being said, we make a concerted effort to make sure they are brief. We meet what I would assert to be the requirements for a legal ad, which properly identifies the property. And it properly identifies, essentially here, the maximum relief sought. We cannot publish full letters of details for every little setback that they want, et cetera. It's a general piece of information. We publish all the information on the town's website so that anybody can access the plans that are proposed. And I would assert to you that clearly people have been noticed because they're here, right? So that being said, obviously it's the board's determination, but I will just explain to you that we do specifically keep the legal ads very brief.
But were they noticed that there may not be any special permit at all?
That's your option in any vote. But we don't publish, here are your multiple options. It's your choice.
Could I say something? In my opinion, the way to decide if a special permit is required or not is for the applicant to apply for a building permit. Because it's the building department's job to decide whether or not they're entitled to that building permit or not. Mr. Clower is asking this board to decide whether or not they're entitled to a building permit rather than the building department. The building department should be asked, and then they decide. And if they agree with Mr. Clower, the building permit gets issued. If they disagree with Mr. Clower appeals that decision, or he comes before this board for a special permit. When you need to know what type of permitting you need in this town, you walk into town hall and you go to the building department. You don't run upstairs to the zoning board for advice on these types of things. You start with the building department. And if the building department makes a decision that you disagree with, well, then you consider your other options, and one would be to appeal. I don't believe this is properly before this board. Your bylaw specifically enumerates the powers that this board has, and this isn't one of them.
And I think there's just simply too many questions unanswered here to proceed.
I agree.
If we proceed tonight, we're just inviting litigation.
Well, if he withdraws his original and just goes back to this, I mean, what's changed?
Well, they're pursuing this, we're still, he has not waived his argument under the exemption.
I thought he just said that he would be willing to pull it.
He'd be willing to go ahead if we deny it, but I didn't interpret that to be he's waiving it.
Oh, I interpreted it if he'd be willing to go ahead without us getting into
Just
it.
ask him to waive it.
Yeah,
I asked him if he's waived it, and he said he preferred.
I think we should get counsel.
that's the way I heard it, but
That's my
blind in
opinion.
one ear.
I think we should get counsel.
I would like that.
Will you agree on that, Frank?
Would the board not want to hear from Mr. Street as to what his position is?
He doesn't come to appeals.
I would like to hear whether Mr. Clower wants to withdraw, just go ahead with his original application. Otherwise, there's no sense in us proceeding. I would guess that would be the,
I still want to hear from
Consensus.
Laura, if she'll even answer back, maybe.
I'm thinking through the if this, then that, if that, then this matrix in my head. As I see it, if we waive this request in this moment, it wouldn't prohibit us from still applying for building permit under that exemption, even if the special permit were denied.
what?
Wow. Okay.
You're looking for bunt and hit a grand slam?
How about a continuation, so we
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
take
well.
into this? I can't.
I
I don't feel him thrown in.
You just shut me down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Does everybody agree?
yeah. Continue. We'll get information from
I
town
mean-
council.
I'd be happy
We'll
to,
have questions.
We're not lawyers, we get to play one on TV, but this gets a little too deep for me.
in the words of was it Sam Rayburn, I'm just a simple country lawyer.
Yeah. I only got 8 years of school and 5 in the first grade, 3 in the second. This is over my head.
I'd be happy to speak with town council as well, and to speak further to Mr. Street.
I
So.
think that's just our best.
There
bet.
are, this is a question of first impression in a lot of ways.
It is.
this board.
This is just a litigation nightmare, so I think
Like 12th
that's what we need to do.
We're looking for questions, whether or not the question of the exemption
Yeah.
is properly before us, and if it is, do we have the authority to rule on it? And then what is the vote? Is it a majority vote or a 4-to-1
Right.
vote?
And then I would think that that should be noticed, so these people can know that
Yes.
they can come here all for nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not proper. It doesn't treat the public in the fashion they should be treated.
And I would move that this case be continued to an agreeable date.
Second, as the continuance.
All right, so you want to continue, and what are we looking for in the interim?
Advice from town
Repeat your
council.
questions again, Frank, for Noreen.
All right, but we need to be specific, so do you want to ask about notice?
Notice?
Or, here's the other part too, is depending on when you continue to,
Yeah.
if notice is a concern, it can be renoticed.
And should they be separate? Should he
Well-
come, I mean,
It's,
I don't think that's unreasonable either.
no,
I
but,
mean, we might be able to deal with that simply, and then if he's not granted the permit, then we'll get on to this. I mean, it's not fair to have these people, I don't think, anyway, this is quite confusing. Like I said, it sounds like you're trying to bunt and hit a grand slam.
If it pleases the board, if the applicant were to apply for the building permit, there's your answer right there as to, we don't even need to take it up if the applicant has applied for a building permit.
That is
The
true.
building department has granted it.
That's a $20,000 to $30,000 question now. because you gotta have to have structurals done, and then you have to pay for the building permit itself.
Well, I understand, but I didn't write the bylaw, and the bylaw reads the way it reads, and that's unfortunate, but the applicants made their pitch tonight for a special permit, and I know that there are a lot of people in this room that want to be heard relative to that. So I guess that begs the question, are they going to be heard tonight, or are we going to continue that?
If we're going to continue, we're just going to continue
Yeah.
and not have any public, I feel.
I-
Until we have our-
It would be an exercise of futility.
Yeah.
I believe there's been
That's
a
my
motion.
opinion.
I believe there's been a motion and a second for continuation, though.
There hasn't been a vote yet.
Yeah, I was looking over the notes.
So
She
the
was
hearing
writing
would
down the
be
questions.
Open for public comment at the next hearing.
Yes.
All right,
As to the
so,
questions, and through you, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
The vote required as to or either an appeal of the building commissioner's determination or lack thereof, if it's a simple majority or a supermajority. Second, as to the request for our determination as to whether or not a special permit is needed. Is it proper, or does it need to come in the form of an appeal after a denial, or otherwise an applicant being aggrieved?
Or a supportive finding.
And should it be a
Or can the
separate,
board make a finding that it is not required?
and should it be a separate application? Keep it simple.
yeah, so I don't
I
think
don't
you
think that's
need a
possible.
separate application. I think you can have a single application. You can make
Several
multiple
compartments
asks.
on it, yeah.
Right.
Well, it would have to be in order anyway. Can't put the cart before the
I
horse.
think you did that. I
Take
think
this
that's
up.
No, well, there are circumstances where building commissioners have deferred determinations to zoning board of appeals before. I can give you an example of the Greek churches where they have arches that exceed height limits, right? So the
you're
building
talking Greek.
commissioner did not want to, as of right, grant the building permit because of the height issue. However, separate issue, under the Dover Amendment, it's an exemption. So in that circumstance, the board found that there was not a special permit required and that it was covered under Dover, okay? So you do have the authority to do that.
Yeah, but Dover's a whole different animal.
Dover is a whole thing, but I'm just saying, you have the ability to make a determination whether something, you can make a finding that it doesn't require a special permit, but perhaps it makes best sense for the building commissioner to,
Opine. What kind of dates are we looking at?
Sounds like bend over.
we would be looking at June 26th, but again, I want to make sure we have the complete list of everything you're looking for, because, for example, if notice is an issue, in the interim time, we can certainly correct the notice and include what needs to be included, so that that issue goes away.
Okay.
So, so we have notice, we have the vote. Do you
Don't
want?
have the vote.
We don't have a vote yet because we
No,
don't know exactly what
no,
we're voting
you
on.
want to know about the vote.
Yes, yes, sorry.
How many you need?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we want any documentation through the chair from the building commissioner? I mean, there's 100 pages in this document, and to Attorney Levert's point, there's nothing
Maybe
here
something
from
from
the
Gary.
building commissioner.
But he had no
Well-
comment.
He had no comment
Yeah,
in
didn't even make
the
a
file.
I know, can we ask for a comment?
Right, I
think
think
that
it would be
means he threw it in our
appropriate to
hands,
get some type of determination
Yeah.
from the building commissioner.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, obviously, the plans are not building ready with electrics and all that, right? But I think as far as making a determination based on what is currently available, that
I think
should
it's a
be
good idea.
reasonable.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm available
We'll
the
add that.
26th.
Huh?
I'm available the 26th.
okay, good. Attorney Leritz, is 26 okay? Chris, is 26 okay? June?
June 26th.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second up here?
Yes.
Everybody all set to vote? All those in favor of continuing to the 26th?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Sorry, you guys, for coming out and having a look at us, I'm sorry.
I hope nobody's confused.
Well, we're already punting, folks.
Excuse me. seconded the vote?
Jim, who made the motion? Jim made the motion? Who seconded? You made the, Jim
I
seconded.
seconded it.
Jim.
Frank made the motion, I seconded it.
Well, that was crazy, huh?
Amendment? That's easy, that's right in the,
Well, I didn't have punting that on my
doesn't
bingo
apply
card.
to essentially school uses and parks and things like that.
Really?
I
We're all
had to have my
learning.
foot rebuilt. When I did my Achilles, I smashed all the tendons in my foot and the ligaments. Just didn't show up because that was more painful.
My sons would have been
Hopefully this is the end, but
And my daughter, actually. All right, well, moving on. Our next case is 2325, 464 Davisville Road.
Okay, I'm just going to let everybody kind of
Yeah.
meander out.
We just want to remind people that we're still in session, and keep conversations outside.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Folks, we need to start another hearing.
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, never mind, Nicole.
Don't need to. I do better hollering.
Okay, this is application number 23 of the year 2025 by Kevin P. and Mary Beth Duffy, trustees. Just as a disclosure, I am not related to them. They have
Only by
applied.
country.
They have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for modification of existing special permits pursuant to Section 240-10.2A and 246.6B of the zoning bylaw of the Code of Falmouth to convert a portion of the existing workshop into an accessory dwelling unit. Subject properties 464 Davisville Road in East Falmouth. The zoning district is an RB district. There's a historic district, and there's also the Bournes Pond Coastal Pond Overlay District that are involved. There are two flood zones, AE 12 and AE 13, and a portion of this property is in both of them. The existing situation is a single-family dwelling with an accessory structure, a pool, and a workshop, 6,079 square feet. The proposal is for a single-family dwelling, an accessory structure, a pool, and the workshop with an ADU for 6,031 square feet. The three existing special permits are, and I'm going to just read them. Special permit 89 of the year 2003 granted a special permit for an accessory workshop structure, 22 feet in height, with a condition that there be no accessory apartment in the structure. Special permit 21 of the year 2012 for an existing accessory guest house structure, 21 feet in height, 3 bedrooms, guests only, no cooking, no bedroom in the workshop, and again, no ADU or accessory dwelling unit on the property. Then in 9924, that's an administrative approval from the administrator of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which related to a farmer's porch and some other work on the property, but it incorporated all of the conditions in Special Permit 8903 and 2112. They remain in full force and effect. So that's what the application is to eliminate the no accessory apartment in those three special permits. The property is 87,966 square feet in a zoning district which currently requires 40,000 square feet. Street frontage is 147 feet in a district that currently requires 100 square feet. Davisville Road is a public right-of-way. Lot coverage by structure, 6.9%. It will be 6.8%. It's well within the 20% limit of the zoning bylaw. The lot coverage by structure, parking, and paving is 16.3%. It'll remain the same, well within the 40% allowed by the zoning bylaw. There are no noted nonconformities on this property. Engineering has said that if the ADU is approved, it will have the number of 464C Davisville Road. Board of Health is okay with the septic system. There are 2 septic systems on the property. Conservation had no comment. Fire, no comment. Water Department said a separate water service to the ADU is required, and they also want to be aware that no cross-connection is allowed between town water and well water if there's a well on the property. Planning Board approved site plan review on April 25th, 2025. They were concerned with stormwater runoff, and the rental period for the ADU or for any property on the is not less than 6 months. No noted letters of either in support or opposition in the file.
Mr. Duffy, I believe there was a revised referral from the Water Department because we submitted a revised plan noting that the back building is serviced by a drinking water well. So they released that request for a separate water service.
Oh, well, fine, okay.
And this is the one that has the planning board site plan?
Yes.
Yes, Planning Board site plan review. Approved April 25th, 2025.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Kevin Flower. I am before you representing Kevin and Mary Beth Duffy, the owners of 464 Davisville Road. Mr. Duffy is here with us this evening. We are applying for modification of the existing special permits, 89-03 and 21-12, to allow for a detached accessory apartment in the existing barn/workshop space. So 464 Davisville is located near the southern end of Davisville Road. It is a lot of 87,996 square feet and is slightly over 2 acres, zoned RB, and does presently contain a single-family dwelling at the front of the lot, as well as an accessory building with 3 bedrooms which is formerly a home with the kitchen removed, and an existing workshop which does not presently have any bedrooms. However, the workshop meets the definition of a bedroom as noted in the Health Board referral. Some history is really required to understand the site and application. Mr. Duffy did a great job going through it, but I will review as well. Special permit 89-03 was issued when the workshop and the home were on an abutting parcel at 468 Davisville Road. Then, as now, they were in common ownership, though different common owner. The decision allowed an addition to the workshop, but conditioned that it not be a separate accessory apartment. Those conditions have been carried over. Special permit 21-12 was issued to allow an adjustment to the lot lines between 464 and 468 Davisville, which relocated the then existing dwelling and workshop from 468 to 464. So this resulted in a primary dwelling in the front of the lot, the accessory building, and 2 accessory buildings, but the accessory structure with the bedrooms had the kitchen removed, which is conditioned in that approval, and also which just serves simply as accessory habitable space to the primary dwelling. And then there was the workshop space. So condition number 4 of that stated there shall be no bedrooms created within the accessory workshop structure on the subject property. Condition number 9 stated there should be no accessory apartment allowed on the subject property as set forth in section 240-70D of the Code of Falmouth. Condition number 10 stated the applicant shall submit to the Board of Appeals for approval a restrictive covenant /deed restriction document stating that the subject property use is a single-family dwelling and that the accessory structure shall be used by family members only and shall not be rented out separately from the single-family dwelling on the subject property. That covenant was recorded and included a statement that said, the workshop shall not contain any bedrooms. This covenant shall run with the land in perpetuity. It may be modified only with the board's approval set forth in the decision duly filed at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. As this board knows, there has been some recent legislature at the state, known as the Affordable Homes Act of 2024, which allowed for accessory dwelling units as a by right matter, and actually removed the requirement of a special permit for detached accessory dwellings. However, we have these existing special permit conditions which we're seeking to modify. So the applicant's seeking to convert a portion of the workshop into an ADU pursuant to 246.6B. Under this proposal, 853 square feet of the workshop, which is some first floor space and some loft, will be converted to the ADU. The balance will remain storage and workshop area. As noted in health referral, this is not considered an increase in bedrooms. There's no impact on conservation. It is in line with the zoning requirements. The lot coverage by structure shall be 6.8, which is well under the 20% allowed. The lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking will be only 16.3%, well under the 40% allowed. It complies with all setback and lot coverage requirements. And further, it meets all the requirements for an ADU. The lot is more than 7,500 square feet. There's 1 proposed bedroom in the ADU. The ADU is 853 square feet, which is only 26.6% of the primary dwelling, where up to 50% is allowed. It meets all the design standards set forth in the bylaw. There's no significant changes in existing appearance. The appearance remains that of a single-family dwelling with associated outbuildings. All of which results in this request, which is to modify condition number 2 of special permit 89-03 and conditions number 4, 5, 9, and 10 of special permit 21-12, as well as restrictive covenant, which would be accomplished via the recording of a modification. We did note a well on the plans to address the water referral. So this proposal will not create any new nonconformities. All structures in the lot will comply with setback and lot coverage requirements. The proposed change is by no means substantially more detrimental than what exists. And this will be in compliance with the state law which governs ADUs as well. So I believe the board can and should approve these modifications to the existing special permits, but I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
Let's start down this end today.
We don't have any questions right now.
Nothing yet, Nick? Tony?
I'm a little confused about this. The current 464B is the middle building, is
Yes.
that correct? Plans I have in front of me, and my question, I guess, to begin with is, you can only have one ADU on the site. The middle building appears to be an existing ADU because it has a kitchen in it. Your argument in the past has been that it has no cooking facilities. But it's clearly labeled as a kitchen, and a kitchen, well, right, is someplace where you prepare food. So how can you have 464B as an ADU, or the appearance of an ADU, and then how can you have the work shed then become an ADU?
So our bylaw has a specific definition of what a dwelling is, and included in that is cooking facilities. There are no cooking facilities in 464B, though it was a condition of the approval. A kitchen can be a place where you eat, and that could be cereal. That is not cooking. It could be a place for gathering. It could be any number of things. Those are plans that the applicant prepared at my behest. I didn't scrutinize the labeling of the rooms, but I did confirm with him that there's no cooking facilities in that building, which is what would make it a dwelling. But beyond that, that wouldn't constitute an ADU, because an ADU has size limitations as well as bedroom limitations. What we're proposing is an ADU that is within those size limitations and within those bedroom limitations. So that does not constitute an ADU. It's simply accessory habitable space that is accessory to the primary dwelling. It's not used separately, can't be rented separately. An ADU can be rented separately. The conditions governing that would continue to govern that.
Well, those are my concerns. The board doesn't have the opportunity to look inside of these buildings. We have something clearly labeled as a kitchen, and by all rights, a kitchen is someplace where you do cooking and prepare food. So I only bring that up for the board to consider. I appreciate what you've said. By all appearances, the work shed will create a second ADU. But isn't this more about clearing up the restrictive covenant on the work shed?
Yeah.
I mean, is that the basic question? So in other words, if in fact 464B is not a current ADU by whatever the definition of an ADU is, doesn't it just fall back to just clearing up the covenant, because it says, as you pointed out, that the board has the right, or can come back to the board to change that covenant? Isn't that all that's required
That's
tonight?
what we're looking to do, is to release the covenant, because the board, I say this very respectfully, doesn't govern whether or not there would be an ADU in the workshop. That's under state law, under this new Affordable Homes Act. What I'm asking.
May I ask a question on that? We have Massachusetts Affordable Housing law has a new ADU, excuse me. But we are still going through that as part of it. It's going to be Article 16, and it's not part of our bylaw yet, and I'm not sure if that can be used in this argument.
State law would override local zoning.
All right, so even if the Attorney General has not approved our bylaw, we have to follow the state bylaw.
Yeah, and also bear in mind that our approved bylaw, though not our voted approved bylaw by town meeting, though not yet approved by the Attorney General, is retroactive to town meeting. So it's in effect currently.
All right, so basically, it is about clearing up the restrictive covenant.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Couple very easy ground ball questions. I noted the additional size is 6,079, and it's being reduced to 6,031. What's being eliminated, or is that just a scrivener's error?
There is, this stairway's coming off.
Okay.
There's a stairway to this loft storage area right now that's being removed.
Let's see. This is a land court property?
Yes.
Okay. And I did read the planning board decision. I presume from zoning standpoint that there'll be no objection that we also condition any rentals be not less than 6 months, specifically excluding week. I presume this is not going to become a commercial enterprise.
No, and this is, I mean, that's saying, that's putting a condition saying we'll do what we're supposed to do anyways. So, yes, we're happy to do that.
It's a lovely property and a very nice project. Thank you.
Frank?
I have no questions at this time, thank you.
What was the square footage of the ADU again? Sorry.
853 square feet. And the Affordable Homes Act allows for 900 square feet or 50% of the primary dwelling, whichever is less.
Thank you.
Mark, you have anything?
Oh. We're gonna see a lot of different things, and this is certainly a new one on me. But I can understand, you have lots of kids and grandchildren.
Spreading everybody out.
Yeah, the further away the better sometimes.
4 adult-grown sons with grandchildren
Yeah.
Nice to have
It's
space.
about 600 feet away.
who probably still fight like they're 12.
They probably will.
I'll be honest, I'm a little gray here, but I got nothing I can hang my hat on. So, I mean, you could subdivide this and do this anyway, I guess, so, what am I gonna say?
Anybody have any other questions before we go to the public? Everybody good up here?
Yeah.
You're all set? Anybody from the public want to comment? Wow, different crowd than the last one, huh?
I thought they were here for this.
That's how many people didn't raise their hand. Little quick math for you.
I think you're right.
I say we motion to close.
Second.
We have a motion to close in a second. Any discussion up here? Do we need any more information from Kevin? Because I know from Attorney Clower. Last time we closed, I did have to ask a question of him, and I have to. Yes, Ridge Heights, that's usually my question. Everybody's all set to
Yep.
close?
22B.
All those in favor of closing? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to modify condition 2 of special permit 89-3 and modify conditions 4, 5, 9, and 10 of special permit 21-12, and also to modify administrative approval 9924 and the covenant that generated by it and recorded in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds to eliminate the requirement or the prohibition on an accessory dwelling unit on the property.
Second.
Scott beat you.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Shall we do findings?
Okay, we have the property, properties in an RB zoning district. There are no nonconformities on the property. Their property is 87,966 square feet in a district which requires 40,000 square foot minimum. The street frontage is 147 feet in a district which requires 100 feet of frontage. Davisville Road is a public right-of-way. The lot coverage by structure is 6.9%, will be 6.8% within the 20% limit of the zoning bylaw. Lot coverage by structure, parking, and paving will be 16.3% within the 40% limit of this Falmouth zoning bylaw. There are no noted nonconformities dimensionally on the property. The referrals have been read into the record, but the planning board, in its site plan review of April 25th, 2025, notes that the rental period, there'll be a 6-month minimum rental period on the ADU, and also the conditions of the relative state law regarding rental of an ADU shall apply. There are no noted letters in support or in opposition. And since this is not, well, this is an amendment to a special permit, but the conditions, I'll read them anyways. In granting a special permit or modifying a special permit, Section 240-12.1E requires that the the Zoning Board of Appeals make a determination that the proposed use will not have an adverse effect that overbalances the beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or the town with respect to it, and we determine that the site is adequate for the proposed use, the site is suitable for the proposed use, there's no impact on traffic flow and safety, there's adequate disposal of sewage as evidenced by the referral from the Board of Health, there's adequate utilities, and it will not have a negative impact on affordable housing.
Nice.
No opposition offered at the hearing.
And none noted in the file.
Any conditions?
The conditions in the site plan review regarding rental period
Rental, the planning board shall comply with all boards.
comply with all boards, right.
All boards per plans. You didn't change, no, you didn't. All department requirements and requests. Construction hours, 7 AM through 7 PM, Monday through Friday, 8 AM through 4 on Saturdays. Construction on Sunday or town-observed holidays. Any violation or work hour limitations, report to the ZBA may be result in the applicant being recalled to a meeting of the ZBA with such notice as the board deems proper to outline why there is a violation. All construction vehicles and materials should be located in the lot. Dark sky compliant lighting. I think, anybody else got any other conditions?
Modified restrictive covenant to be drafted by the applicant's attorney, submitted to town council for review as to.
I actually think just your special permit decision, the way it's written in the covenant, it says will be modified by a decision of this board recorded at the registry of deeds.
Modify. If a restricted covenant is going to be required by land court, they're prickly over there. It'll be drafted by the applicant's attorney, reviewed by town council, and executed by an appropriate town official, if needed.
Oh, we also want to post the assigned address for 64C. And I'm not sure if engineering made any mention
We'll
of.
do B2 just to be safe.
Yeah, okay. Want to still retain the restriction for no cooking in the
Can be-
excess habitable space, right? And I think this bit.
You want anything on that kitchen?
I think it's covered now.
We did
Just
that,
did it?
yep.
Okay. I think that's it, right? Anybody think of any other condition? I think we're good. Everybody all set to vote?
Ready?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Great project, enjoy. All right, next up at bat, we have 314 Quistit.
314 Quistit. This is application 27 of the year 2025, submitted by William F. and Elizabeth A. Scannell. They've applied to the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240-10.2A and 240-11.4A1 I and 247.3C of the Falmouth zoning bylaw to construct a pool, cabana, and sport court in the front yard more than 50 feet from the front property line, and to allow the alteration of a landform within the floodplain overlay district. The subject property is located at 314 Quistit Avenue in Falmouth. The property is in an RA zoning district. The overlay districts are the Quistit Harbor Coastal Pond Overlay District, and also the National Heritage Endangered Species Program has identified this as property subject to their requirements. The flood zones are noted at VE 16 and VE 18. There's a previous decision of the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals designated 2652 of the year 1975, which applied to the property when it was previously owned by the National Academy of Science, and it does not have any bearing on this hearing, so I won't read it. The existing property is 1,280 square feet. It's a single-family dwelling with a carriage house.
1,000?
10,000.
I was just say, no.
That's not bad.
I wrote it kind of small here because I'm running out of space on my paper.
They got plenty of space.
Doing a great job, Frank.
The proposal is for a single-family dwelling with a carriage house, a pool, cabana, and sports court in the front yard, and the total square footage will be 12,329 square feet. The property is 175,986 square feet. That is equivalent of 4.04 acres on a district that currently requires a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size. For such a large lot, though, it only has 88 feet of frontage, and 100 is required. The street is a public right-of-way, that's Quistit Avenue. The lot coverage by structure is 5.8%. It will increase to 7%. The limit is 20 under the zoning bylaw. The lot coverage by structure, parking and paving is 7%. It will increase to 23.6%, but the limit is 40%. Now, the carriage house, which is on the property, is non-conforming. It is in the front yard, but it is more than 50 feet from the street. I didn't find a special permit for it, so apparently it was built before a special permit was required.
Been there for a while.
Okay. There are no noted nonconformities with any of the structures on the property. We have a referral from engineering. They concerned about stormwater runoff, and again, their usual concern about the building number. The Board of Health is okay with the septic systems. The assessors is okay. The fire department has no comment. The water department is okay. The planning board did not issue us they sent no comment. There's a historic district involved on the property, and they've issued 2 certificates of appropriateness and 3 administrative approvals. There were no letters either in support or in opposition found in the file.
There was questions in there about the alteration of land.
Yes. That's one of the things they've applied for is,
There was a referral from the building department that we worked through, and
Okay.
they changed it, then changed it back, and
Okay.
we modified I'll get to that.
You can explain. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I am before you representing Bill and Beth Scannell, the owners of 314 Quistit Avenue. I'm joined tonight by Mrs. Scannell, who's here, as well as Mike Borselli, the civil engineer with Falmouth Engineering, Dave Hawk, who is the landscape architect with Hawk Design, and Thad Semesco, who is the architect with SV Design. We are before you tonight requesting a special permit for this property at 314 Quistit. So as Mr. Duffy went through, this is a 4-acre parcel in an RA zoning district. A portion of the lot is in the VE18 and a portion is in the AE16, although neither structure is located in the flood zone. It's located basically in Quistit Harbor. It's surrounded by the harbor on 3 sides. I know we joke around a lot about how pretty a site can be. This is a pretty special piece of property.
Yeah.
As the board's likely aware, this was previously owned by the National Academy of Sciences. It was used by them as lodging and function space for decades. The owners purchased this about 2 years ago and have been undertaking permitting and construction on this since then. So the carriage house was the first phase, and that phase is basically done. They're presently working on the main house, and what we think is the last phase will be the undertaking of the landscape and amenity or accessory structure designs. So we're seeking special permit from you for alteration to a non-conforming structure under 240-10.2A. The accessory structure is in the front yard, so it's non-conforming in that sense, though we're not seeking a special permit relative to it. We're also seeking accessory structure in the front yard under 240-11.4A1I, and that's for the pool, the cabana, and the sports court, because believe it or not, right here is technically the front yard. And we're also seeking a special permit for alteration to a landform within a flood zone per section 247.3C. So as has been noted, the existing carriage house is non-conforming. It's presently located in the front yard of the primary dwelling, but it's over 240 feet from the street. There's no further changes being sought for that at this time. The applicants have proposed new accessory structures, being a pool cabana, and a sports court, which are, as noted, in the front yard, although they are more than 500 feet from the street frontage. The cabana is not habitable space, does not create any new bedrooms, and will be tied to the primary septic system. The cabana has a ridge height of 21 feet 10 inches. And in connection with the landscape design and these structures, we're proposing to bring in fill to soften the current severe slopes on the property. So this is going to result in a much more modest step down from the main house down to the pool, patio, and cabana area, and then a further step down to the sports court. The first step down will go from about elevation 24 to about elevation 20, and the second step down will go from about elevation 20 down to elevation 18 or so. Fill will allow the site to be terraced to ease those existing slopes. It's been conveyed to me that less severe slopes are better for wave action in the event of a significant storm. The proposed accessory structures will all conform to setback and lot coverage requirements. The total lot coverage by structure will be only 7%. Lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking will be 23.6%, both of which are well below the 20% and 40% allowed by right respectively. So the requirements for all of these various applications under 240-10.2A, pre-existing non-conforming structures may be changed by special permit, provided not substantially more detrimental than what exists. And you're asked to consider whether or not there's any new non-conformities created, impairs views and vistas, and reasonably conforms to the neighborhood. In this case, as noted, there's the only non-conformity that exists is the carriage house, which is not being changed, and it's well over 50 feet from the street. There's no change to views and vistas, and arguably conforms to the neighborhood. With regards to alteration of a landform within a flood area under 247.3, the board should find in the granting of a special permit that it will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, or conflict with existing bylaws. In this case, the property is located on an isthmus surrounded on a requisite harbor on 3 sides. Any fill that is brought in will not increase potential flood heights, create any threats to public safety, have any sort of public expense, or conflict with existing bylaws. This proposal has already been reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission. Beyond that, both of these sections also rely on 240-12.1E. And since the accessory structures in the front yard under 240-11.4A1I don't have any specific requirements, that 12.1E also becomes the dispositive consideration for that application. So the overarching question there is, does the proposed use have an adverse effect that overbalances its beneficial effects on the neighborhood of the town? And you're asked to consider there the adequacy of the site, size for the proposed use, the suitability and whether or not it's well situated for the proposed use. And again, we are at 4.4 acres, very low lot coverage by structure, very low lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, and fairly isolated. So I think it is more than adequate in size and suitable and well situated for those uses. There's no impact on traffic or safety. Same use as a single-family residence, just better utilization for the applicants. There's more than adequate methods of sewage disposal and drainage. Utilities and public services are already present and, again, adequate, and there's no impact on the supply of affordable housing. So under this proposal, there's no new nonconformities created. There's no adverse effects here that overbalance the benefits I've outlined, and I believe this meets all the requirements of 240-10.2A, 240-11.4A1I, and 247.3C. So I'd ask that the board grant the special permit, but along with the rest of the team, I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have at this time.
Great, thank you. Mark, we'll start down your end.
You know, I mean, they're going to improve the contours of the buffering in a storm, and, I mean, what do I got to say, you know? After a hurricane, they might have to retrieve their cabana in New Bedford, but that's not my problem.
Mike Borselli actually had some really great historical photographs of this from over 100 years ago that shows that since that time, that was tennis courts and gardens down there, and it's been carved out, so we're actually kind of bringing it back to more how it was.
Yeah. And then the terracing effect's going to be an improvement too. Yeah. It's beautiful. I have nothing.
There's already a fair amount of material that's been deposited there. You're still sticking to no more than 7,500 cubic yards, correct?
I wouldn't want to cap it at 7,500. That's the anticipated number. So, you know, anytime you have construction like this going on, there's going to be variables plus or minus. So I wouldn't want there to be a hard and fast condition that no more than, but that is the anticipated figure.
And that's what you discussed with the building commission?
And with conservation.
No, it's a stellar project. No further questions. Thank you.
Just to clear up a loose end, under section 247.3C, The Board of Appeals must consider that the alteration to the landform is the minimum necessary for the proposed use considering the flood hazard. Can you make a comment on that?
I don't really know what it means, Frank.
I think that would be.
You know, I mean, it's one of those things, I looked at that, and it's one of those questions, it's like, well, what's the minimum necessary? This is the minimum necessary to effect the change they're looking for.
Well, I guess that's part of the consideration, so.
I think they're more concerned with taking away, not adding
Yeah.
to in that.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. Sure, I'm right.
But I was there
The
today.
testimony about the contour being improved and that will decrease wave action, I think we're covered.
Yeah. And conservation had really surprisingly very few questions about it.
I was there today, and I saw that big pile of dirt, and it's huge.
Yeah.
I agree.
You all set, Frank?
Yeah.
Jim, you all set?
No questions, just a comment. I think the first time I ever saw this property was sailing out of Woods Hole, and it was beautiful then, and it's going to be even better now. It's a beautiful project.
Tony,
I do have a couple questions.
go for it.
And I'm sure that Attorney Clower will answer them for me. I just don't have the answers for them. Under 7.3C, the standard by which this board is to review the flooding issues here, it says the standard, no alteration, and you read this earlier.
Already read it.
No alteration of the land form shall be permitted where there may be a risk of altering the drainage or runoff to the detriment of other landowners or the town. Before granting a special permit for the alteration of the landform, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall duly consider any recommendation made by Conservation Commission, which I could not find, or the Planning Board, which I could not find. And under 7.3C2, in findings, the ZBA must find the following: special permit shall only be issued upon findings made by the Zoning Board of Appeals that A, this is on page 64. The granting of the special permit will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, or conflict with existing laws. And B, the relief granted is the minimum necessary. I have no idea what that means. The relief granted is the minimum necessary considering the flood. So how do you pass that test for the standard and then the conditions that this board must find and put into the decision?
So what that's intended for is when you have a property that's surrounded by other properties. We have a unique situation here where we're surrounded on three sides by Quistit Harbor. So there's no increased risk of flooding to other properties that's going to result from this fill coming in because the drainage is going to be towards Quistit Harbor. We're not going to be increasing the drainage going to Quistit Harbor. It's going to be the same amount. It's just going to change its slope. So what that provision looks for is, are you increasing potential flood on another property or not? And I would argue that it's very hard to change the flood volume of the Atlantic Ocean. So I don't think that whatever change we make here is going to adversely affect Quistit Harbor or Buzzards Bay in general.
So my question to that part is, how does the board, and I believe what you're saying, I believe that you're probably right, but you're not an engineer. You're not. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. I would like to have this board have an engineer state why they can put this in the findings, or whatever has to go into the findings, to comply with both these sections. And I think that's exactly what it says. It has to be done, and maybe the engineer could do that.
Any deposit is an improvement.
Well,
Pretty much that simple.
but it's just that this board has to put it in the findings, and all I'm asking, what is the proof? What is needed so that it can be put into the findings? And so far, we don't have that. That's all I'm
I
asking.
would just say that you do have testimony, and my testimony's actually come from the engineer. Because Mike and I discussed this earlier, and those were his words, not mine, including the Atlantic Ocean joke. I stole that from him.
He wants to hear Mike say it.
Unless the board feels that it shouldn't be.
Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. We've had numerous conversations about this provision of the bylaw, and the basic premise of this site and the application of this fill in a flood zone is, as I understand it, is this. The landform where we're going to alter with the cabana, pool, and sports court is effectively a bowl. There's side slopes on three sides with relatively severe slopes. If you've been to the site, you may have been concerned about traversing in your vehicle around because of how severe it is. There's vertical granite walls. We think that was done at a time prior to develop that lower area for a tennis court, ironically, and some ornamental gardens. But, so, with regard to placing fill in a flood zone, this is a coastal flood zone. And when you add fill in some flood zones, it can have the effect of diverting floodwaters. It's not typical of this. It's more typical of like freshwater river flooding. So adding fill to this bowl to take the steeper slopes and make them less severe, well, it does add some fill. Its effect is not even measurable with regard to displacing Quistit Harbor and Buzzards Bay, because it's just de minimis. And the bowl effect is such that any floodwaters that went in are not being deflected to a neighboring property. That's the best way I can portray this. And we half-heartedly joke that you can't really displace the Atlantic Ocean by adding fill, but I also joked about perhaps there's a dredging project going on somewhere else that's going to compensate for this fill, so there's a net difference in the sea level rise from this fill. So it can't be it's not being redirected to cause impacts to neighboring property because of its bowl-like effect, and it's not displacing and changing sea level and causing flooding because of the placement of the fill.
I appreciate that, thank you. So that's your testimony that this board can rely on with regard to 7.3C, 7.3C2. All right, thank you.
Nick, you all set? Anybody else have any further questions up here? No. Anybody from the public?
So just to confirm for the board, I know this is not a usual subject that you grant special permits for, the filling in the flood zone. It's not, it's outside your typical
Yeah.
jurisdiction. So I did double check with the conservation agent today. They did look at this project very carefully. This is something that is more common for them to look at. And they have issued a order of conditions, and they're fine with what's proposed.
May I, Madam Chair?
Go for it.
May I just, when you look at their findings, and please excuse me while I search this pile of paper I have here, which is way too much. In their findings, they don't refer to any of that. They may have looked at it, but, and please correct me, Noreen, if I'm incorrect, but the findings do not support any of this whatsoever. And for some reason, I can't find that. If anybody has it, it'd be nice if you could show that to me.
The Concom decision?
Concom decision, but the findings themselves do not support any of this. It didn't appear to be their major concern, and I'm sure that we have a copy, I just read it, a copy of those findings in our files. Here we go. So, and that is findings. So the Concom has 4 findings, none of which, and again, I may be reading this wrong, and please excuse me if I am, but none of the 4 findings, which is where I went to, speaks to this flooding issue or any part of this. So I can tell by the look on your face, you're going to tell me something that I'm missing.
I would just say, Concom tends to be a hearing where much of the work goes in before the hearing itself. So there is often, and usually, a lot of collaboration between the engineer or the engineering team in this case and the conservation agent. So I know that there was a lot of conversation with Ms. Lincoln about this moving forward. So it may not be borne out in the findings, but it was a significant point of discussion, which I think is reflected in Noreen's conversation with Ms. Lincoln today.
All right, I'm just pointing out that it's not in the findings. So this board, I suspect, and again, I'm not an attorney, so you can correct me on this, has to rely on the engineer's testimony here tonight to go into the record, if I'm correct.
And Noreen has spoken with
And
you.
Noreen.
Right, and I think the other issue is that what is asked of the zoning board is not duplicative of what's asked of conservation. So in other words, they wouldn't have specified in their decisions, which I think are maybe a little bit less lengthy than ours, that they would make the same findings that we do. And like I said, given the unusual nature of this request, I felt it was of value to just confirm with them that there were not issues of concern that would affect your thought and your vote.
Decision, yeah, thank you for doing that. Any other questions, Tony? You good?
None, thank you.
Everybody good up here? No one from the public, right?
Motion to close, Madam Chair?
Second.
Motion to close in a second. One last chance. Everybody's good? All those in favor of closing? Aye. Opposed? None.
Motion to approve with conditions?
Second.
Motion approving. All right, Frank, take it away.
Property is in an RA zoning district. The overlay district of the Quistit Harbor Coastal Pond Overlay District and the National Heritage Endangered Species Program has jurisdiction. The flood zones are VE 16, VE 18. The street frontage is 88 feet and a 100-foot requirement. The lot size is 175,986 square feet, which is equivalent of 4.04 acres. 40,000 square feet is required. The existing single-family dwelling in the carriage house is 10,280 square feet. The proposal is for a single-family dwelling, the carriage house, the pool, the cabana, and the sports court, which will have a footprint of 12,329 square feet. The carriage house exists as a non-conforming structure. It's in the front yard, but it's more than 50 feet from the street, and apparently was built before there was a requirement for a special permit for a structure in the front yard. Lot coverage by structure will be 7%. The limit is 20%. Lot coverage by structure, parking, and paving, 23.6%. 40% is the noted limit in the zoning bylaw. Other than the nonconformity of the carriage house, there are no noted dimensional nonconformities on the existing property. I've read into the record the referrals from the various departments and note that the Conservation Commission issued an order of condition approving the project on 4/2/25. The 240-10.2A for nonconforming structure, which these proposals will be, the nonconforming structure and uses may be extended or altered or changed, shall not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconforming structure or use, and we so find. The setback, the requirement for a special permit for a structure in the front yard is 240-11.4A1 of the Falmouth Zoning Bylaw. The setback from the street frontage for a structure in the front yard not less than 50 feet from the street. We find that the property is appropriate to grant this relief. With respect to the alteration of the landform under Section 247.3C of the Falmouth Zoning Bylaw, we are able to make a determination that the alteration of the landform will not propose a risk of altering the drainage or runoff to the detriment of other landholders or the town, and that in considering this application for a special permit, this board has considered the recommendations of the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board. Also, the board is making a determination that the granting of the special permit will not result in increased flood height, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, or conflict with existing bylaws, and as testified, the relief granted is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard. With respect to a special permit overall, Section 240-12.1E of the zoning bylaw provides that the Zoning Board of Appeals may grant a special permit upon a determination that the proposed structure or uses will not have an adverse effect which overbalance the beneficial effect in the neighborhood and in the town, that the site is adequate for the proposed use, it is suitable for the proposed use, there'll be no impact on traffic flow and safety. Sewage is sufficiently, there's sufficient sewage disposal, there are adequate utilities, and there's no impact on affordable housing.
A lot out of you, huh? All right,
all?
Frank.
Do we need to say anything about the moving of the 7,500 cubic yards, or?
Well, we're granting the special permit under.
Estimated, right, under
All right.
240-14.5. Okay.
You did certification of historical, right?
I put it as a referral, yes.
Okay.
I read it into the record during the opening.
Okay, good. All right, conditions. Where's my condition pile? Per plans, all boards, construction hours, standard construction hours, dark sky compliant lighting. Did I say per plans? Yeah. Anybody else have any other? I don't know, we're not gonna put any conditions on the earth moving.
No.
No. Anybody got any other conditions?
So just engineering had requested that
Oh,
there
the
be
address, the address.
posting
Yeah.
of the address at the street,
Sure.
Yeah,
so.
just all boards, right?
That'd be a weird line for me to draw in the sand.
Everybody all set?
Yeah.
All set to vote?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none.
Thank you all very much for your time tonight.
Thanks for letting us drive out there. All right, we have one last hearing. 2825 85 Winslow Road, Clements, which was not staked. So we're looking to continue.
Good evening.
Hi.
Doug Clements, I'm the owner of 85 Winslow Road.
Which wasn't staked when we went out, so we have to continue it.
So if I can address that?
Sure.
I agree. Both Mr. Duffy and Mr. Peterson came to the property and it was not staked. I apologize for that, and I know it's a condition of the board to hear the appeal. It was difficult to get my surveyor out there. He did the best he could and showed up yesterday. The property is staked. I have pictures of it to help you. I know that Mr. Duffy and Mr. Peterson walked the property versus saying it's not, well, Mr. Peterson in the rain decided not to walk the first time. And then when he came the second time,
He brought his umbrella.
well, no, it was a beautiful day. And the footprint of the proposed garage, I staked myself, and it was good enough that actually the surveyor basically just ribboned the stakes that I put out. And it's staked now. It's not a complicated project, I
Has to be
understand.
done 7 days before. We can't change it for anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and
I mean, it's the first page of the application.
I'm not here to argue that. I'm just hoping, in faint hope that, knowing that it is staked and I did satisfy all the requirements, not in the timeline that's specified, that possibly you could take a look and make a ruling. But if you need to continue, then you need to continue.
We're gonna do it pretty quick, though. Anybody want to give me a motion to continue to June 5th, right, guys? June 5th?
What day?
Yeah,
June 10th, you said?
June 5th.
June 5th.
Yeah, motion to continue to June 5th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. June 5th's okay with you?
Yes.
Good thing you didn't say no. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none.
Thank
bad,
you.
Jazz.
We'll see you then. Keep an eye on them, though, because we're gonna go back out.
Yeah, it's all.
Stakes wander, so keep an eye.
everything's- Oh, that's what I hear.
Yeah,
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Have a good night.
all right. What else do we have on here? Minutes.
So we are tabling those.
All right,
Okay.
works for me. Updates? Did you type for me, or you just gonna do a list?
I did not, but I will. I'll just run through them quickly.
Yep.
13 Cricket, reduced, it was a raise and rebuild that you had
Yeah, we
done.
did that.
They wound up reducing their footprint by 36 square feet, so we granted that. 79 Meadow Neck, Road, reconfigured deck, changed the dormers, and changed a bedroom on the second floor to be a great room. We approved that. 26 Sycamore was extending a second floor deck to the north by 5 feet. 4 Pocasset removed a shed and instead added a closet to their home. They removed a westerly deck to expand their kitchen out slightly. 366 Mira Vista reconstructed stoops to add a roof. They took out their chimney, added in instead a gas fireplace and a box window. And 192 Metoxet, Chair signed the administrative approval to slightly shift the new dwelling on that lot to be slightly more conforming and more out of the water. So,
No slacking from Noreen. Thank you. Board discussion? Anybody have anything?
Well, we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we hashed out a lot of stuff there.
I stood ready to be the timer tonight.
He was ready and prepared, too. Board updates. And future agenda items. We're good. Our next meeting is June 5th at 6. Mark?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.